Chapter 3: The Shape Inside Things. To understand Aristotle, begin with the ordinary surprise that a thing is itself. An oak is not merely a pile of wood and leaves. A horse is not just bones, heat, motion, and appetite. A city is not only walls, roads, money, and noise. A human life is not a sequence of pleasures and pains scattered across the years. Something holds each together. Something makes this living creature this kind of creature, this action courageous rather than reckless, this argument valid rather than merely persuasive. Aristotle's philosophy grows from that instinct. The world is full of structured beings, and careful thought can discover the structures. He does not begin by asking us to flee the visible world. He asks us to look harder at it. The forms of things are not decorations pasted onto matter, nor are they, as Plato often suggested, separate perfect originals dwelling beyond the world of change. For Aristotle, form is at work here, in the individual thing, in the acorn's power to become an oak, in the body organized as a living animal, in the trained habit that makes a person just. The first great pillar of his thought is substance. The word can sound heavy and abstract, but Aristotle's point is close to common sense. Some things exist in their own right, other things exist as features of them. A man can be pale, musical, angry, seated, taller than his brother, or standing in the marketplace. But paleness and anger do not wander around by themselves. They belong to someone or something. The individual thing, the person, horse, tree, cup, or city, is the primary subject. It is what bears qualities, changes through time, and remains enough itself for us to speak about it. This focus on substance gave Aristotle a way to resist two opposite temptations. One temptation is to dissolve the world into loose qualities, colors, shapes, motions, impressions. The other is to treat the visible thing as a second-rate copy of a truer reality somewhere else. Aristotle wanted to preserve the dignity of the actual horse before us. If we are trying to understand horsehood, we do not ignore horses. We examine them. We ask what kind of body, movement, reproduction, perception, and activity belong to this kind of animal. Here enters one of his most important ideas: matter and form. Matter is what something is made from. Form is the organizing pattern that makes the matter a definite thing. Bronze can become a statue, but bronze by itself is not yet Athene, a lion, or a runner in mid-stride. Wood can become a bed, but only when shaped and ordered toward that use. Flesh and bone are not enough for an animal, unless organized as a living body with capacities of nourishment, perception, movement, and desire. Aristotle's name for this union of matter and form is often called hylomorphism, from Greek words for matter and form. The term is technical, but the thought is vivid. Matter without form is indeterminate, a possibility waiting for organization. Form without matter, at least in the natural world, is not a separate little ghost. A living thing is a formed body. A statue is shaped bronze or marble. A house is bricks, timber, and stone arranged for shelter. We understand things by seeing how material is gathered into a meaningful structure. This also helps Aristotle explain change. Change is real, but it is not chaos. A block of marble can become a statue because it has the potential to receive that form. An acorn can become an oak because it already belongs to a living kind whose mature form is oak life. A child can become courageous because human beings have the capacity to learn fear, endure danger, imitate examples, and form stable habits. Change is the movement from what can be to what is. That pair, potentiality and actuality, is one of Aristotle's deepest inventions. Potentiality is not nothing. It is a real capacity rooted in the kind of thing something is. A stone does not have the potential to become a horse. A horse does not have the potential to become a syllogism. But a seed may become a plant, a student may become wise, an untrained hand may become skilled at the lyre. Actuality is the fulfillment or exercise of such a capacity. The musician playing is more fully actual as a musician than the musician asleep. The grown tree is the acorn's promise unfolded. This way of thinking gives Aristotle's world a sense of direction. Things are not merely pushed from behind, they are also understood by what they tend toward. To explain a thing fully, Aristotle says, we need several kinds of causes. The material cause tells us what it is made of: bronze, wood, flesh, syllables, laws. The formal cause tells us what structure makes it what it is: the shape of the statue, the plan of the house, the organization of the animal. The efficient cause tells us what brings it about: the sculptor, builder, parent, teacher, or moving force. The final cause tells us its end or purpose: the statue made for honor or beauty, the house for shelter, the eye for seeing, the flute for music. Modern ears often stumble over final causes. Purpose in nature can sound suspicious, as if every leaf were secretly making plans. Aristotle did not mean that plants deliberate like generals. He meant that natural beings have characteristic activities and fulfillments. Eyes are intelligible because they see. Roots are intelligible because they draw nourishment. Teeth differ in shape because biting, tearing, and grinding are different tasks. In living things especially, structure and function belong together. Later science would challenge much in this picture. Evolution explains the fit between structure and function, without assuming that nature consciously aims at goals. Physics does not need a final cause for every falling stone. But Aristotle's question has not disappeared. When biologists ask what a heart is for, when doctors ask how an organ contributes to the life of the body, when designers ask what a tool is meant to do, they are still moving in territory Aristotle marked. His teleology was too broad in places, but his attention to function remains powerful. Because Aristotle believed the world is intelligible, he cared intensely about reasoning well. He is one of the founders of formal logic, not because he loved dry puzzles for their own sake, but because bad reasoning damages the search for truth. A person may speak beautifully and still argue falsely. A city may be persuaded by rhythm, status, fear, or cleverness. Aristotle wanted tools for telling valid movement of thought from mere verbal success. The syllogism became his famous instrument. If all human beings are mortal, and Socrates is a human being, then Socrates is mortal. The example is simple, almost too simple, but its force lies in necessity. If the premises are true and arranged in the right form, the conclusion follows. Logic, for Aristotle, disciplines the passage from what is granted to what must be accepted. It also depends on clear terms. If we do not know what we mean by human, mortal, virtue, justice, or cause, we will only shuffle sounds. He also held firmly to the principle of non-contradiction. The same thing cannot both be and not be in the same respect at the same time. This may sound obvious until one tries to argue with someone who treats words as smoke. Aristotle saw that thought itself depends on stable distinctions. If a claim and its denial can both be true in exactly the same way, inquiry collapses. We cannot investigate nature, debate ethics, or judge politics if speech has no grip. Yet Aristotle's logic is not isolated from his study of beings. His categories, substance, quantity, quality, relation, place, time, position, state, action, and passion, are attempts to map the main ways we say something about something. A person is a substance. 5 feet tall concerns quantity, pale or brave concerns quality, taller than another concerns relation, in Athens concerns place, yesterday concerns time. The list may look like grammar, but for Aristotle grammar opens onto reality. Speech reveals the shapes of thought, and thought, if disciplined, reveals the shapes of being. His ethics follows the same pattern. Ask what kind of being a human is, then ask what fulfillment belongs to that being. A knife is good if it cuts well. An eye is good if it sees well. What then is the human good? Aristotle's answer is not wealth, pleasure, reputation, or mere survival, though each may have a place. The distinctive human capacity is reason. We can deliberate, choose, remember reasons, give accounts, shape desire, and live according to a view of what is noble or base. Therefore, the human good must be an activity of the soul in accordance with virtue, over a complete life. The phrase often translated as happiness is eudaimonia, but it is not happiness as a passing good mood. It is flourishing, living well and doing well as the kind of creature one is. A flourishing life has pleasure in it, but pleasure is not the master. It has external goods, because poverty, illness, political disaster, or the loss of friends can wound a life. But external goods are not enough. The center is excellent activity, choosing and acting in ways that express a well-formed character. Character, for Aristotle, is made by habit. We become just by doing just actions, temperate by practicing temperance, brave by facing fears in the right way. This can sound circular until we remember how learning works. A child becomes truthful by being guided into truth-telling before fully grasping its beauty. A musician becomes skilled by practicing scales that are not yet music in the fullest sense. At first we need teachers, laws, parents, customs, and examples. Over time, repeated action shapes desire itself. The good person does not merely do the right thing with clenched teeth. The good person learns to take pleasure in the noble. This is where the golden mean enters. Virtue often stands between two failures, one of excess and one of deficiency. Courage stands between rashness and cowardice. Generosity stands between wastefulness and stinginess. Proper pride stands between vanity and smallness of soul. But the mean is not arithmetic. The right amount of fear, anger, giving, or confidence depends on the person, the situation, the stakes, and the reason for acting. 10 coins may be generous for one person and insulting from another. Running into danger may be brave in battle and foolish in a pointless dare. So virtue requires phronsies, practical wisdom. This is not cleverness. A clever villain can find effective means to bad ends. Practical wisdom sees what matters in a concrete situation. It knows when a general rule applies and when the particular case asks for nuance. It joins perception, experience, emotional training, and rational judgment. Aristotle's ethical person is not a rule machine, but a mature judge. Friendship belongs near the heart of this moral vision. Aristotle devotes remarkable care to it because he knows human beings do not flourish alone. Some friendships are based on usefulness, some on pleasure, and the highest on shared love of the good. In such friendship, another person becomes, in a sense, another self, not a possession, but a companion in seeing and choosing the noble. A good life needs such companions because virtue grows in shared activity. Politics is the wider form of that shared life. Aristotle famously calls the human being a political animal. He does not mean merely that people enjoy elections or arguments. He means that speech gives us the ability to deliberate about justice and advantage, noble and shameful, good and bad. The polis exists not simply so people can avoid being killed or trade grain more efficiently. It exists at its best so human beings can live well. This claim gives his politics its nobility and its danger. The noble part is his insistence that communities shape character. Law is not only a fence around private desire, it is a teacher. Education is not a private luxury, it is central to the city's moral purpose. Citizens must be formed to participate in judgment, self-rule, and shared responsibility. A city that cares only about wealth, security, or domination has forgotten the human end. The dangerous part is that Aristotle's own account of who fully counted was gravely limited. He defended natural slavery and treated women as inferior in ways that reflect and rationalize the injustices of his society. These are not accidental details with no connection to his system. They show how a philosophy of nature and function can be misused when it mistakes social power for natural order. Later readers can learn from Aristotle's framework while rejecting those conclusions decisively. In fact, his own demand that we examine what things really are gives us reason to challenge inherited hierarchies rather than baptize them. The same mixed legacy appears in his science. He observed animals with care, but also accepted errors. He sought causes everywhere, but sometimes supplied the wrong ones. He understood function brilliantly, but pushed purpose beyond what later evidence supports. This does not make him useless. It makes him human and historically located. The enduring value lies not in treating every Aristotelian claim as final, but in seeing the method, distinguish, observe, compare, ask for causes, connect explanation to the nature of the thing. What unites the whole system is the conviction that beings have intelligible forms and characteristic fulfillments. Nature is not a heap. Thought is not noise. Ethics is not taste. Politics is not merely power. A good explanation respects matter, structure, source, and end. A good argument respects terms and valid inference. A good life respects the kind of being a human is: rational, desiring, social, trainable, vulnerable, and capable of excellence. One can picture the unity of Aristotle's thought through a simple scene at the Lyceum. A student brings a question about an animal's part. Aristotle asks what material composes it, what structure it has, what produces it, what activity it serves. Another student asks about courage. Aristotle asks what fear is appropriate, what action expresses the noble, what habit has formed the agent, what end the action serves. A third asks about law. Aristotle asks what kind of citizens the law produces, what constitution it belongs to, what common good it aims at. Different subjects, same discipline. Find the form, find the cause, find the end, and judge accordingly. That is the shape inside Aristotle's philosophy. It is not a list to memorize, though later schools sometimes made it one. It is a way of saying, look at this thing before you. Do not be satisfied with a name. Ask what it is made of, how it came to be, what it can become, and what activity would count as its flourishing. Then ask the same of yourself, your friendships, your habits, and your city. For a modern reader, Aristotle can feel both ancient and immediate. Ancient because his cosmos is not ours, his biology is dated, and his politics bears the marks of a hierarchical world. Immediate because we still ask his questions. What makes a life more than successful? How does habit shape desire? What does education owe to character? How do we reason without fooling ourselves? What is the relation between a thing's structure and its purpose? When is balance wisdom, and when is it cowardice dressed as moderation? Aristotle's answers are not always ours. But his confidence that such questions deserve patient, reality-loving attention remains a gift. He invites us to live as if the world can be understood more truly, our actions chosen more wisely, and our communities ordered more humanely. The shape inside things is not always obvious. It must be sought. For Aristotle, that search is philosophy, the disciplined passage from wonder to understanding, and from understanding to a better way of living.